Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. This is an amazing turnout. I hope we can manage to keep you entertained for the next hour or so. This is the panel on the very big business of professional sports, and we have some very astute Amherst grads who can talk to you about the business of professional sports. To my right here is David S. Wolff, class of 1962. He's the chairman and president of Wolff Companies, which is a Houston-based holding company that manages David's investment in real estate development, financial assets, agriculture, and most relevant to this panel, professional sports, because he is a partner in the ownership group of the San Francisco Giants and their wonderful stadium, AT&T Park. And he's been a partner in that organization since 2000 when they moved into AT&T Park. He was not a varsity athlete in, well, at least not in baseball at Amherst, but was a lifelong sports fan and has found a way to translate that passion into his professional life by becoming invested in a sports team. And he confessed to me that actually has tried to do this on past occasions, but this is the most recent and successful attempt with the Giants. To my far right is Gene Fugett, who many of you know from his legendary career at Amherst College in both basketball and football, but he went on to play in the NFL for 8 seasons, 4 with the Dallas Cowboys, which is where I was watching you when I was a freshman watching Monday Night Football, and then with the Washington Redskins. Just to keep amused while being an all-pro tight end for the Washington Redskins, he got his JD from George Washington? George Washington. Passed the bar, I think, as a player. Just
4.5 years.
Yeah, an amazing resume. He went on to, after passing the Maryland State Bar, went on to actually join his brother in business, and at one point became eventually chairman of TLC Beatrice International Holdings, one of the I guess the largest African American owned and
Well, it was the
run
largest
company.
offshore buyout at the time, and I think we ended up being 512 in the Fortune 500,
Yeah, so
Fortune 1000.
Yeah, so an amazing business
30%
career.
of the food in the city of Paris. Colin Powell told me I was a strategic asset, and everything I said would be recorded. I would be followed everywhere I went. I would be in 3 countries in one day.
Good Lord.
It was really fascinating.
That
But we're talking about sports now.
Yeah, exactly. And currently, you're practicing law in Baltimore, and actually very relevant to this panel. And one of the questions we're going to talk about, but it is the most recent past president of the Retired Players Steering Committee of the NFL Players Association. And I'm David Downs. I'm class of 1977, and my actual professional sports background was more in the area of network television. I did 30 years of network television work, mostly in programming and acquisition. First for 20 years with ABC Sports, where I covered a lot of the sports these gentlemen represent, and then for 10 years with the Spanish language networks of Univision, covering almost exclusively soccer. I made a dramatic switch about 3 years ago in my career. I was recruited to be the executive director of the U.S.'s World Cup bid, and I'm sorry to say we lost that bid to Qatar, and if you want to ask questions about that later, that's fine, but it's not, if you want to skewer me over drinks later tonight. And I'm sorry that we lost, but we lost. And that forced me into retirement. But then the phone rang, and it was a second division soccer league in the United States that was just starting. And so now I currently serve as the commissioner of the North American Soccer League, which is the men's second division professional soccer league in North America. So let's talk about some sports here. And I want to talk about, I think, one of the most fascinating to me things that has happened in the last year in sports. Sports, as the title of the panel says, is a very, very big business these days. Just the other day, the Dodgers sold for $2 billion, which I think staggered even the most astute investors, but nonetheless, that was the price.
But the team didn't go for $2 billion.
Yeah. Yeah?
No.
Well,
real estate.
oh, okay, all right. Yeah, okay, I see. As opposed to, okay, well, all right, we're already getting into it. That's right, but they didn't get the parking lot. They didn't get the parking lot.
And it so happened that $150 million happened to be what his wife was owed. That was what he got for the real estate.
Right,
So it was,
there you
it's
go.
a pretty good deal. Bankruptcy.
The combined asset value right now of the NFL's 32 teams and the NBA's 32 teams is approaching $50 billion.
And if you have NFL stocks, go short on it immediately.
the league,
Not going to be as bad as Facebook.
Yeah.
But
the league,
it's in a bad way.
the league revenue was $20 billion 2 years ago, and the NBA's annual revenue is $8 billion, and yet each of these leagues started their season, the most recent season, by locking out their players. And by all accounts, the reason they locked out the players is there was an argument over maybe 2% of the revenue pie.
No, they locked them out because they could.
Well, and they could. But so let's start, Gene. I think you want to talk about this. So
I mean, really,
as a player, the players
man.
have been getting 57% of this multi-billion-dollar pie, and now the owners come to you and say it's got to be 55.
I came back from Paris depressed. I was depressed when I went there. My brother had died. Colin Powell told me I couldn't have any new friends, no girlfriends. I'm going to Paris, France, living on Ile Saint Louis, and can't have any new friends. So and it would rain 3 months in a row. You never saw the sun. So of course I came back depressed. So somebody said, "Hey man, these NFL guys, they really have issues. Why don't you help them?" So I went to a convention. Next thing I know, hey, why don't you go on a steering committee? And then somehow, once I got on the steering committee, I had been around Sandy Rosenberg long enough to learn how to count. And next thing you know, I'm the president, right? Oh my gosh, Amherst College, got these guys from Alabama and Michigan State reporting to me, right? I got Cornelius, Bennett. I mean, I had to make sure I kept my majority, so I had to get a thing. And it was one of the scariest times in the NFL for players. Now, I had gone through some scary times. I mean, I arrived in 1972, and it was just unbelievable. 100 players, 50 get cut in the first week, and somehow I was still there. It was unbelievable. Tom Landry handed me a playbook and said, I can't teach you where to line up, but if you learn where to line up, I'll teach you how to play football. The night before I'd go to training camp, I get a call from George Young, who knew Ostendorf, and said, Fugett, I know you don't know how to block. So in the blocking drills, just get in there and make a lot of noise, and Tom will teach you. Well, so the first year, so I'm still there, and then I asked Bob Hayes, why am I still here? And he said, well, Coach likes you. I said, why? He said, well, you learned the playbook in 2 days. So that Amherst College. So I always tell the kids, I wasn't the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, but I knew all the plays. And for the whole first year, I was always a half count late coming off the ball, so I never was offsides. Now I was late a couple times, but I was not going to get called offside because Ernie Startner called me offside during practice, and then Landry would punish you after practice. Now, I didn't know he was trying to see if you were a professional or not, because that during this punishment session was the day I think I turned pro, because I was waitlisted at Harvard. I was in Columbia, and I wanted to go to law school, and I didn't really think I was going to make the team. Like I said, the first week it's 100 guys. Next week it's 100 again, and I turned around and I said, why did they let the water boy sit under the goalpost? And I see some gray hair, because a lot of people I tell the story, they don't understand. I said, why did let this guy sit under the goalpost? He said, Fugett, that's not a water boy. I said, who's that? That's Dwayne Thomas. I said, what? So here I was. I'm saying, now, wait a minute. This is the guy you may remember the year before he went through a whole season and never spoke to the press. Now, nowadays, they got it in the contract where you have, but in those days, it wasn't in your contract where you had to talk to the press. So he went the whole season, didn't say one word. And then Jim Brown got involved with it and everything. So Brookshire is up there after Super Bowl, MVP of the Super Bowl that year, really became famous, played Tom Landry design called a Toss GT. He had a guy named Rayfield Wright who taught me how to block, who just went in the Hall of Fame, and he was really a 6'7" basketball player, and he could pull. So they would use fake action and then toss the ball, guard, tackle, GT, tight end, slamming down. Mike Dicker teaching me how to do that. He was not happy. I was not aggressive enough for Mike Dicker. And that's because my idea of a good block was a head fake and a slide move, just wall him off. We don't have to get physical. Can we talk about it? No, it was bad. I mean, can you imagine the preseason game and I go up to the line of scrimmage and I look up and who's in front of me? We're playing the Dolphins. It's Doug Swift. Now, here I am with my teammate, Doug Swift. At the end of the game, the coach said, who was that guy you were dancing with the whole game? No, it was bad. Swift said, look, let me make a tackle and then I'll let you get open. I said, no. I mean, he's talking on the field. I thought I was back in the Beta House. I mean, it was really, I was looking for Danny Quinn. I was saying, where am I? So it was really quite an experience. But anyway, so Calvin Hill says, hey, do you want a job where you'll really be respected? And I said, yeah. He said, why don't you be the player rep? Now, nobody told me, they didn't have a course that told me that Dallas was the worst union team, that the league was run by Tex Schramm, who was in Dallas, who had been around, that he's the one that hired Pete Rozelle. And this is not, and Texas, the last time I heard, I don't think they like unions down there. So it was not a good situation. But what did I know? I'm 20 years old. And I got a guy from Yale giving me advice, okay? So I'm saying, hey, now I'm getting the Ivy League thing I never got. I'm in, he likes me. Oh, and part of the deal, we got to switch roommates. Now, I didn't really think that was so bad because my roommate now, I was going to go from Robert Newhouse, a rookie, boring, Texas, Bowman. I'm not learning anything. I'm going to be with Toady Smith, Bubba Smith brother, USC, Wild Bunch, El Dorado, Big Sombrero. I'm ready to go. But what Calvin didn't told me is that I couldn't get in the room till 5 of 11. Toady had in every port. So he beat you to the room. You get to the room and the door's locked. And I got to sit in somebody else's room watching a college game that he probably programmed Saturday night, just sitting up there waiting to get in my room. So this is my early indoctrination into the league. So I said, well, look, these guys need help. I mean, how many of you guys have college degrees? You know, I'm looking around, the hands don't go up. So I couldn't even get them to come to meetings. So 1974, you may recall, no freedom, no football strike. We had the bell, broken Liberty Bell. We're going on strike. We're going to show those owners. Now, here we are. We got a career that's less than 5 years. And I wasn't much of a leader, I got to admit. 8 guys came out. And 1 guy was from Stanford and went to the beach. So now I got 6 guys in California going to try to picket the Cowboys. Tex Schramm says you'll never play in the league again. So I just called my leadership. And the next day, Gene Upshaw shows up with Lyle Alzado, et cetera. We lose the strike, but we won in the court. So my first contract in 1972 was for $15,000, $16,000, and $17,500. But they found out that I was only 20 and my father didn't sign it. So I got a chance to renegotiate. So now I'm up to $20,000. No, this is good. I mean, we were looking for ways to augment our income. And I said, Gil Brand, Gil, how come none of the black guys ever get speaking engagements? He says, oh, you guys want speaking engagements? I mean, like he didn't think we wanted them. And I said, yeah. Oh, okay, Fugett, I got one for you. So I said, well, where is it? He said, Sherman, Texas. Father-son chicken dinner. I said, yeah. How much? He said, $200. I said, cash? He said, yeah. So, boy, I go up there. Next thing I know, I'm in a Christian church in the basement. I said, hey, can I speak? No, you can't speak yet. We're eating. So I grew up Catholic. Okay, we'd have stuff in the church. No big deal. Then we went upstairs. Next thing I know, I'm listening to a guy who said he was looking for his tennis shoes and found Jesus in the closet. Okay, I mean, and I'm thinking there, Gil, and I'm saying I am not leaving without this $200. I mean, I drove up here. I done ate the chicken. I done signed 800 autographs. Okay, and I am going to get $200. So what am I going to say? But Amherst prepared me, right? I was a good listener. And I said, thanks for inviting me. I, did all that kind of stuff. And then I said, before every game, Coach Landry leads us in a prayer. And it was just like the movie, really, where they have the prayer, amen, and after that, everybody starts cursing and everything. I mean, it really is like that. I mean, so, we do have a prayer. And then I said that, and Tom Landry's one of the leaders of the Christian. So really, I quickly got it off of me. Had it all. So anyway, I stumbled and bumbled through that. So then I turned around to the guy, and I felt like I was at Ernest Angley or something. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I said, well, did I do all right? He said, did you hear that, y'all? Did he do all right, my boy? So I got Gil. I said, Gil, you got me on that, okay? And that's how they treat the player rep. So my last year, I go to training camp. Now, the year before that, Mike Dicker retires. I'm on the roster. I'm the only tight end on the roster. And believe me, every woman in Dallas knew it. I'm Dallas Cowboy. Only Dick is gone, Truax is gone, and then what happens? First round draft choice, Billy Joe Dupree. Right? I'm making 16, 17, 20. He comes in, boom. Then Dicker retires and gives him his number. Even I could see the writing on that wall. So, oh, Gene, can you get up at 6 o'clock and come out and work out with him? No. Oh, then they got mad. Oh, they got mad. The only time I would show up is when Staubach was there. And I would never leave the field while Staubach was on the field. I would never leave him out there because quarterbacks can decide who they want to throw to. But I didn't get the full story till years later at the Redskins with Charlie Taylor. I jumped for a ball. He says, Fugett, what are you doing? I said, well, I know Staubach used to do that to you all the time, man. I don't know how you guys survive. He said, just remember, Fugett, interception is a quarterback statistic. So he played 14 years, right? So it's just the little things that you learn along the way. But anyway, I was just trying to give you a look at the Union thing because it was difficult. So with that strike, the Raiders come down, everybody's mad. We went in court. Thank God there was a renegade coach named George Allen. Oh, yeah. Now, I asked Ben Bradley, I said, look, Ben Bradley, the editor of Washington Post, I had gotten hired after Super Bowl X by the Washington Post. Had a front page story in the news department, and Woodward was quick to tell me it was below the fold. And it was. It wasn't that great a story. I mean, I'm going around doing prison surveys. And I'm in one of the state prisons. I said, man, that guy looks crazy. He said, yeah, he is. I said, what's he doing in here? Oh, man, the state prison's full. So I said, well, oh, so what happens then? Oh, they just send them over here. So I said, really? So I said, editor, how's it going? Oh, it's interesting. But I saw this. The editor went nuts. Oh, we got this room. So that was my one front page story. But anyway, so I'm at the Washington Post. And then George Allen calls and says, hey, you're a free agent, and now because we were in court, this was the dawning of free agency in the NFL. I'm one of the first free agents. I had to take a 10% pay cut. And that Super Bowl X picture, I made $21,000 that season playing 20 games. Now I got like another 10 or 12 in playoff money, but that's all I got. And I don't know how many concussions I got. We didn't have a right to our medical records until the HIPAA law came, because it was a company doctor who they were trying to get to operate on you, who you couldn't even sue. I mean, the head of the NFL concussion study was a rheumatologist. I mean, no, this is true. This is the NFL.
Same general vicinity.
I'm telling you, they're tough guys. Their families, are second generation in a lot of cases, and they're from a different America, and they're tough, and they think every penny is like a manhole cover. And they fight over it, and it's just like they're playing football with you. And how can any person have a chance, in a system like that? So that's why you have to have a union. I mean, there's just no way you can do anything, because even then in the union, you're powerless. So here we are, Gene Upshaw dies, the only person that we ever had. We could never achieve what baseball achieved. They play 10 and 15 years. All of their contracts are guaranteed. So they were able to do that, and they had a brilliant leader. The NBA, they still don't know what they're doing. Gene,
let me stop you here and let David jump in.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. But I mean,
let me just conclude on that thing is that the commissioner has exceeded his authority. And now he's being sued in federal court in defamation. And they've already admitted that they did have collusion, and they're in federal court, and then they got a zillion concussion suits. So that's why I just said, in case we don't get back to it, the go short in the NFL. So just in case
we'll get back to it, but
I'll cede the rest of my time.
What I'd like... I'd like to ask.
You're not going to be interrupted.
Yeah, I'd like to ask David here if he can then take the owner's side in this, because I mean we are obviously the owners locked out the players because the owners could lock out the players, but it may have been preemptive in lieu of a strike that would have come. The contract was out. Why is it that the owners need to clamp down on the player payrolls? Why shouldn't we just let the owners pay what they feel like, the way they do, say, in a soccer league in Europe?
Well, I really am not familiar with the NFL and the relationships there. I can just speak in terms of baseball. and it's a whole different balance of power. It really goes back to 1994 when baseball went on strike, and that so intimidated and shocked the owners that they really lost the will to fight the players' union after that because it was so costly. There were some side results of that. One of the things, the owners really wanted to institute drug testing, and the players' union really fought it on the basis that it was an invasion of personal privacy, which I think is a pretty tenuous argument. And so baseball really sort of had the steroids problem in the early part of this century, and it's unfortunate. And I think it was a result of the imbalance of power in baseball. I think football, it's a different thing. I think the owners have a lot more power than the players. But in baseball, the players really have the upper hand, and that continues to this day. So there is player peace in the end in the Major League Baseball, but the owners pay a high price for it. I was asked, one of the numbers, one of the areas we were going to discuss was, well, what are the numbers in Major League Baseball? So I brought the numbers with me from the Giants from 2011, which I thought I would share with you. The Giants in 2011 sold out every game, had attendance of 3,387,000 people, which is pretty incredible in San Francisco. Had an operating revenue before revenue sharing of $305 million. Had major league player contracts of $124 million, and ended up with, after an incredible season of selling out every game and grossing $305 million with a net cash flow of $8 million, which is 2.7% of gross revenue. And these are the numbers. So in baseball, it's really tight. This year, our player contracts are going to be at least $130 million. And in baseball, all contracts are guaranteed. So we have people like Barry Zito, who are paying $18 million a year. Brian Wilson, who's out for the year, who's our closer, who are paying $10 million a year. And so in football, the contracts are not guaranteed, right? If you get injured.
They're becoming guaranteed, but no, they are not. But
for the 1 year
aren't
only.
those injured contracts insured?
No, you can't buy insurance anymore.
You can't do that anymore?
It's prohibitive. No? You used to be able to, but
okay.
The insurance companies won't really write reasonable insurance contracts to cover injuries now. So what will happen with Albert Pujols, who signed with Anaheim for $250 million for 10 years, if he breaks down after 3 or 4 years, they're going to have to be paying him the next 5 or 6 years.
I thought they were getting insurance. The last Oriole-Red Sox series, the Red Sox had $77 million of people injured, and the whole Oriole payroll is $82 million or something.
And yeah.
Serious.
And these are all, there's a different balance of powers in different leagues. And so in baseball, I think the players really have the upper hand, and what is happening with the new contracts that are coming in. When I went into the Giants, we thought after we sort of finished with Barry Bonds, our payroll would be in the $55 to $70 million range. It's now $130 million. There's one other point I'll touch on, which I think is relevant to what Gene has talked about, which is player injuries. There's been particular attention paid to concussions, and I think that baseball looks pretty good with regards to this issue because, first of all, concussions don't happen nearly as much in baseball, and I think they're treated much more seriously. My sort of exhibit one on that would be the Giants picked up a very good veteran catcher from St. Louis by the name of Mike Matheny. Mike Matheny suffered a concussion from a foul ball that hit his mask, and it happened too many times, and so they had him examined and found that he was getting concussions. He never played another game for the Giants. The Giants paid out his full contract, and he has recovered to the extent that he's now the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. So you'd have to say the guy's in pretty good mental shape, and so I think baseball looks pretty good from the point of view of taking care of players. So those are a couple of comments I'll make.
Yeah, no, I agree. The concussion issue is obviously a very, very serious one right now, and I think one of the other biggest news stories of the year this year is the fact that the NFL commissioner suspended a head coach for the New Orleans Saints, Sean Payton, for an entire year. And we all know enough about football to know how important the head coach is to an organization, and that is a very, very severe penalty. But it was for either encouraging or permitting a bounty system in the Saints locker room where players were rewarded with cash.
It was about conduct that he knew about for years.
Yeah, and quite conceivably lied to the commissioner when he first investigated the situation. But so the question I would ask, and Gene, I have a feeling you're going to have a pretty strong response to this, but
No way.
Yeah, no way. The question I'm going to ask is, I mean, is a year enough? And that's part one. And part two is, does this stuff go on? And is he going to have to eventually suspend 32 head coaches?
Well, I'll start by saying I didn't realize that I had a bounty on me until one day we were playing the Eagles. And I noticed that the running back was 20 yards downfield, and the defensive end grabbed me by the head and just kept punching on me. And I said, why don't you go make a tackle? I try to talk to these guys. I mean, I try to communicate. I said, what? And he said, Fugett, coach said, if I get you to quit, we're going to win. What kind of coach would do that to a guy? I mean, I'm not. Well, anyway, it's really bad. But injuries in the NFL is different in any other league, and the NFL to this day can't even recognize concussions. And if anybody saw the game last year with Colt McCoy in Cleveland and saw the shot that he took, and the fact that they could have a doctor who's supposed to be watching full time, 2 other doctors, and everybody missed it. And with 63 players needing attention, that really can happen. And they don't have someone that does that. And that he went back in that game. And now,
Gene, if we set up a system where the players are going to deny that they've had concussions, because now that we've instituted rules that say if you're concussed, you have to pass a computer test and not get on the field for 2 weeks, is a player going to be afraid to admit he's got a concussion?
Well, the players, everybody knows who Wally Pipp is, okay? And in the NFL, when your career is already less than 4 years, the average career is a half year less than it takes to be vested in a pension. I don't know how that ends up that way with the accurate, but it just so happens that. And knowing that every play could be your last play, every contract could be your last contract, and how difficult it is to even just get on the field, I mean, reason goes out the window. And I can tell you that I tried every substance that was available that would promote healing, not necessarily performance enhancement, but if they had HEH, then I would be taking that. It's going to help me heal, because that's why I stopped playing, because the last 4 years, every year I was rehabbing. Every year. I mean, before I was just going off working, forgot I had played football, but it stuck with me. And every year it was worse and worse and worse. And I just got tired of that. So football is different from the rest of the sports as it comes to that. And I've been advocating that there should not be tackle football until you're in the 9th grade. I didn't let my kids play tackle. And I talk to youth teams all the time, and I talk to parents all the time, and I give them advice, and I say, send your kids out, but go with them. Go with them. I'll never forget, I'm a rookie in Baltimore in 1972. My mother comes out and says, where's Tom Landry? This is after the game. Now, my mom and dad were Colt fans, had Colt season tickets, Section 38. She says, where's, I say, he's on the bus. Well, I want to go meet him. Mom, I don't even talk to Tom Landry. I'm a rookie. My mother's going to get on the team bus. So she gets, boy, God bless my mother. She gets on the team bus and says, hi, Coach, I'm Carolyn Fugett, and I want you to take care of my son. So every coach of all 3 of my kids, of course, got that same speech. And my daughter played AAU. I mean, I'm talking about a bunch of coaches. Like, where did that come from? But that is so important with your kids and your grandkids, is to let that coach know you are there. Because all coaches aren't equal. I was so lucky. If I go to anywhere else, I don't even make it in the NFL. But I go to a man who taught and who thought, and one of the smartest guys of all time, and then I played for, and then at the end of my career when I couldn't get motivated, I'll never forget the game. I don't know, I had an exam and something was going on in my life, and I didn't even feel like playing. I mean, I didn't, and it was a team I couldn't get up for. And I turned to George Starr, my teammate, and said, man, I can't play. And he said, Fucho, if you don't get ready, I'm going to start beating on you. I mean, it's just so mental that I couldn't do it. And it just became more and more difficult the longer that you went. So it's very hard. And then you're treated in such a way. I mean, in Texas, I had a Porsche, and I've never had a speeding ticket. I mean, are you the real Gene Fugett? I mean, it was unbelievable. I don't know why I'm not living in Texas. But then Washington isn't bad. I mean, as soon as I get to D.C., you know, how the hipsters want to get with you and say, okay, Fugett, you need to know they got 5 different police departments here. Oh, you know. So we used to stay out at Dulles Airport and then drive into D.C. at RFK Stadium, which is a bit of a drive. So I'm on the way, I'd be chewing ginseng root, driving the Porsche, got some wild music going, thinking about somebody I'm just going to like really beat up, man. Something I'm trying to think of who I'm really mad at. Somebody hurt my mother. You know, I'm trying to get really like in a not an Amherst zone. This is not like Amherst Williams where y'all are just sort of pushing around. No, this is. It took me a couple of years. It was hard. I mean, Dicker said, Fugett, you gotta punch him in the stomach, and I said, Mike, that might piss him off. That's the idea. Dart didn't teach me that. Okay, I gotta tell you that. I mean, God bless him, but I didn't learn that there. And it's just mentally so different. So to make a long story short, I got a ticket, and then after the game, the guy apologized. He used to work in New York. He didn't know who you were. I mean, I said, look, Joe. Joe Theismann was saying, Fugett, you're so lucky you're here. The president calls us. We got embassies, women from all over the world. I mean, D.C. is so great. I said, Joe, you don't understand. I play for the Cowboys. He said, what does that mean? I said, look, there's only one thing in Texas bigger than a Dallas Cowboy. He said, what's that? I said, Texas Ranger. He said, Nolan Ryan? I said, no, fool, Walker. Walker. That's the only thing bigger than Dallas Cowboy. So how do you come back down to earth from, something like that? I just don't know. And then the Washington Post hires me, and then I asked Ben Bradley, did they put you up to this just so I would sign with the Redskins? And he starts laughing. So I told him, yeah, I'll probably know who Deep Throat is before you tell me that. So I've been meaning to go back. In fact, Corley Malloy just called me. We got to go see Ben Bradley and ask him, where did they put it up? Because my whole life changed by, like I said, that whole union thing. So we stuck with that. We won in court. We couldn't win. We can't win at the bargaining table. We just can't stay out. We're broke, But we can be what's fair, what's legal. And don't be changing the rules. Don't be colluding. Don't be keeping information from us. We still haven't seen the information on the bounty. We still don't even know what happened. All we know is that some people have admitted to cross federal lines to do assault and mayhem. And last time I heard, that's a RICO. Okay, I'm still waiting for the indictments to come down on this because it's that serious. And any player who was in any game, anytime during that period, colorably has a claim.
Well, Gene,
the
players were also hitting to earn the bounties. So the players were participating in the earning of the bounties. So is that because a player can't say no to a coach?
Well, the player's going to play.
The
players are going to play. See, it really doesn't really affect the player. It's sort of like if you just bought a lottery ticket every day and then one day you won. You didn't really win because you were buying every day. You were just lucky. Well, it's the same thing on getting a payout. But the fact is,
no matter what.
There's no question that every NFL team goes into every game trying to knock the quarterback out of the game, period. There's no question about that. I mean, you're trying to hurt him, break his leg or nothing, but you want to hit him hard enough that he'll either start flinching, he'll throw the ball soon, or in Colt McCoy's case, can't come back in. And that has been the objective in the NFL, since day one. And that's not going to change. There's no other sport like that.
Well, David, in baseball, pitchers throw at batters. I mean, somebody goes yard on you, and the unwritten rule is you knock them down the next time. I mean, and a baseball's pretty hard, and get hit at 90 miles an hour can do some damage. Are the teams starting to look at this as an issue? Are they starting to say, we have a $125 million payroll, and we can't
5
afford
days
it?
For hitting the best rookie the baseball seen in 20 years, and the Hamels hits him in the back, and he gets 5 days? Yeah, he admitted it, and he only got 5 days, which is only one
5
missed
days
out
of a 162-game season is not much. I mean, I suspended a guy for 6 games of a 28-game soccer season the other day.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got a commissioner here.
That's right.
I got it.
Well,
I'm sorry, I forget. I got these distinguished people up here with me who know a lot more than I do.
Actually, the first thing I did, my first act as commissioner, was to institute a concussion policy in our league. I mean, soccer concussions are not from heading the ball, but they're from getting elbows when you go up to head the ball. And our son had one in Amherst and missed a couple weeks and had to pass repass a baseline test that they give all Amherst athletes now. So we instituted that policy
Yeah, they
in
weren't
our
even
league.
doing that kind of stuff when I was playing. That
because
was the
it's
baseline tests and all. We didn't have anything like that. All we knew is that if you could get 2 ammonias in your nose and you can't smell them, you should come out the game. We had no other measurement.
about
What
if you-
else? I mean, there was no other measure you could measure it.
How many fingers, Coach?
What? No. What are you doing? Go. You know. I mean, no, you didn't know. You didn't know.
David, I mean, you have these players. They're obviously worth millions and millions of dollars to the franchise. How do you keep them on the field? How do you? I mean, they're your investments. What are there steps that we're taking? Are we getting more scientific in the way that we manage these investments?
Well, I think they work very hard on conditioning. I think the best way to keep a baseball player from getting hurt is to make sure he's in good condition. The injuries that happen, for example, to pitchers with sore arms, there are now all sorts of remedial ways like Tommy John surgery. I think I guess one of the big differences is you have guaranteed contracts, so you want to keep your players healthy. I mean, in terms of throwing at guys, I think it sometimes happens, but I think that you don't throw at a guy to hit him in the head. You don't throw at the guy to hurt him. You sort of throw, if he gets it in the ribs, he's got to be black and blue for a week. But it's nothing like what happens in football. So I think the unwritten rule is you don't throw at a guy's head. You may throw to sort of retaliate in some way, but of course your guys are going to come up the next half innings. You have to be careful about that.
Yep. No, that's absolutely right.
But certain guys, if you
Well,
let them dig in,
depends on the league,
front,
though. In the National League, your pitcher's going to bat and could get hit. The American League, at least, he's off the hook.
Well, I think one of the things that I like about baseball is you've got a great variety of players in terms of nationalities, in terms of sizes and physiques. You have players who are pretty small. There's a guy who's playing second baseman for the Astros this year, Altuve, who I think is about 5'3", and batting something like 320.
I think baseball has a real opportunity to take the lead in globalization. The NFL really blew it when they closed out Europe, and because of the equipment issue, it's going to be very difficult to be global. That's another reason why the NFL has peaked. Now, I know if you have direct ticket, it's another $100 this year to get Red Zone and to be able to watch it anywhere else. But they're running out of things that they can keep, raising it up for. So that's why baseball.
So you're going to become a baseball investor, is that it?
Absolutely. I'm trying to buy minor league teams now.
Yeah, I can tell you about them. Yeah.
Well, if I could switch.
Baseball out of the Olympics after there's so many countries that are playing baseball.
That's a good question.
I knew a little bit about the Olympic politics, and I would say that, and that was simply a case of the number of countries that were playing baseball. There weren't enough. It was also the fact that some of the best countries that were playing baseball weren't putting their best athletes into the Olympic Games. They were in the middle of the Major League Baseball season, and they couldn't play in the Olympic Games. So it was kind of a farce
hockey.
on both
Not like
ends.
hockey
You
where you
had
can take a
countries
break.
that weren't really competitive, and you had countries that should have been competitive that were sending not even B teams.
And I
really.
think guys can have a career in baseball and retire and still be healthy, whereas it's pretty hard for a guy to retire after a career in football, have good knees and other parts of his body working really well. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the players that I've known and some of their attitudes and sort of how they've been treated in the press. Mary and I were on the team playing after we were playing the World Series in 2002 against the Anaheim Angels, and coming back up to San Francisco, Barry Bonds and his wife were sitting back of us. And Barry Bonds has a reputation as not being a nice guy, but my experience with him is he's very articulate and soft-spoken, does not use, I've never heard him use profanity. He doesn't throw guys through plate glass windows like Charles Barkley does. He doesn't get into fights. And we had a conversation with him about his attitude towards his children and how he would sit and read with his son, and when his son would read a paragraph, he'd say, okay, what did that paragraph say? Summarize the paragraph. And he set up trust funds for his children. They get a certain amount of money when they finish high school, a certain amount when they finish college, and a certain amount when they finish graduate school. And he very much emphasizes education, particularly for African American women. Now, this is not an image that comes across in the press of Barry Bonds. He's seen as being very surly. He doesn't like the press because he thinks the press is always trying to use him. And it's sort of one of the things in sports that I find interesting, trying to get to know these people as human beings and differentiating the image that sometimes comes across. And again, I like baseball because you do have, I think our team right now is about 1/3 Hispanic, 1/3 Anglo, and there aren't as many African American players, but there's a real effort in Major League Baseball to get more young African American kids playing baseball and not all trying to play basketball. And so you do have this diversification, which I think will serve baseball well. Plus, I think the absence of sort of obvious violence, which bothers me about hockey, and to a degree also about football.
So, David, is this a play of passion for you? I mean, the 2.9% operating margin probably isn't the best investment for your companies, or is it a long-term asset play, or is it just about the fun of being, associated with a sport that you love and you have the ability to do it?
Well, I don't think you should invest in a professional sports team unless you like that sport, because it can be fun. But I don't find it enjoyable to invest in anything that doesn't also make economic sense. In the case of sports teams, I think it's really about capital appreciation and the value of the team, and hopefully breaking even on a year-to-year basis.
But isn't there also an aspect that it's a public trust also?
Well, I think it can have a great impact on the city. When we won the World Series in 2010, the turnout in San Francisco was something that people had never seen before in the whole city.
It's that public-private partnership is so important.
Yeah, I think teams really bring a city together. Mm-hmm. In terms of appreciation, of course, there was the recent sale of the Dodgers at $2.1 billion from a guy who had bought them in, I think, 2004, Gene, for $450 million. He really didn't pay $450 million because Fox covered the first $50 million he had of operating losses. So he really was paying $400, and then he paid $200 of that with land that he had in Boston that he later signed over to Fox. So he really had about $100 or $200 million in it, and came out after completely ruining the team, ruining his relationship with the community, bad marriage, and his wife, and made $1 billion. So I think that what has happened, the capital appreciation of teams is very significant, and I think I like to go into businesses that other people think don't make sense, because if people think it makes sense, everybody goes and does it.
Well, how does a baseball team appreciate if you say your tickets are sold out? It's going to be tough to raise ticket prices. Your TV contracts are fantastic, but it's hard to believe the TV industry is going to keep lavishing these contracts on you. Is there no ceiling to this appreciation of these clubs?
No.
Well, I sort of liken it.
As long as there's an America, free enterprise.
Yeah, I sort of liken it to a Van Gogh painting. Why is a Van Gogh painting worth $80 million, or the Scream sold for $115 million? Because somebody who has the money to pay for it will pay for it. And if you look at people who buy sports teams, they've made their money in all different areas. Paul Allen at Microsoft, the guys who bought the Golden State Warriors made it in the movie business. You find the guy who bought the Astros made it in the freight business. The Walmart people now own 3 teams. And so in our country, there are a lot of different ways to make money. And there's some guys who, after they've made $1 billion or $500 million or $2 billion, say, I'll pay whatever it takes to buy the Washington Redskins or the Dallas Cowboys or the Chicago Cubs, people who've made that.
They're unique brands.
Yeah, and actually, they have turned out, by and large, if well run and with patient money, to be very good investments. One of the illustrations I use is that in 1983, I was on the board of the largest bank in Houston, and anybody who would have been an intelligent investor would have invested in this bank. A friend of mine, Charlie Thomas, bought the Houston Rockets for $10 million. In 1993, the bank was completely gone. The stock was worth $0, and Charlie sold the Rockets for 8.5 times what he had paid for them 10 years before. And there are numerous illustrations. When I went into the Giants, the valuation was probably 100 to 180 million. Today, the Giants would sell for $1 billion. Wow. And I'm sure they would, because there are a lot of people in the Bay Area who can write the checks to. All you have to do is look at the IPOs that have happened in the Bay Area recently.
Talk about civic responsibility. You guys saved the Giants for San Francisco. They were going to move to Tampa.
And what the Giants did, and this happened, I came in the day we moved into the new ballpark, so I take no credit for it, but the new ballpark that the Giants built in San Francisco completely turned around an entire area of the city. It's now the hottest, most desirable area south of Market. All the high-tech companies, UCSF Medical School, all the rest going down there, and the Giants putting that stadium there really gave that part of the city a new image. So it's an important part of the civic structure, which is what you were talking about.
Well, one thing also, can I if I may, I would just like to ask the people here, what is it about sports that really makes it unique and special. Because when I think about the emotion that fans have about how if the Orioles win, I feel better. When they lose, I don't. I mean, it's the emotion, and it's of course the emotion of playing, and it's the bonds, and it's also the memories that a lot of us had of our teammates and when we played. But what is it? I mean, I would just like to hear some opinions from.
We can forget the stock market.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
That's why we go to the sports page. Okay.
Unpredictable.
Yeah.
Unpredictable.
It's like reality, the first reality television.
Actually, I spent 30 years in network television, and one of the things that we always found fascinating about live television sports was that it was unscripted drama. You couldn't make up some of these wonderful stories that evolve on the playing fields of our nation's sports.
Yeah, and also just if I could say that
History.
History and family. That you went to
True.
the ballpark with your dad and your granddad, and you go to the same ballpark with the same team.
That's right.
Projection.
So it's our job to learn how to take these emotions and grab the money from you. Merchandise,
You're not supposed to
tickets,
say that.
digital subscription.
We can all play them as young people, so therefore we think we understand them and we appreciate them when they're done well. So we can follow them and see ourselves out.
that's a great point. When you watch a double play in baseball and you watch those guys, I mean, they're artists. And, only 10% of the guys who sign major league contracts in the minor leagues ever make it to a single game in the major leagues. 10%. And think how hard it is to be good enough to get a major league contract. So you're looking at the best of the best of the best, and it's an art form to me.
Now, we have about 10 minutes left before they're going to throw us out, so let me throw it up to questions.
One more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Answer to that question. If you go back in history, the elite had college teams to root for, but the masses didn't go to college. So the NFL was created for the people who didn't have colleges to root for, and the affinity became regional. That's what happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the NFL has done a tremendous job of broadcasting every game regionally. As you know, they have, some national telecasts,
That's that
but
Subway
virtually
Notre Dame
every game
concept,
is
right?
done
Where all
there.
these people vote for Notre Dame.
Go ahead,
because they-
Rick.
Jane, I have a question for you, a former Dallas Cowboys fan. Will they ever get back to the Super Bowl with Jerry Jones as the owner?
With Jerry Jones as the owner or Jerry Jones as the general manager? Well, let's look how Aaron Scott would look at this, right? They got a Princeton guy as the head coach. I know he probably did 2 theses, right? You got to wonder about that.
In the yellow back there.
Out of the game completely, would that send a different message?
If the commissioner had thrown Sean Payton out of the game,
Through.
no, what would have sent a message was if he would do like they do in Japan and he had stepped down because he tolerated this for 5 years. That would have sent a message. See, this was tolerated. And why they blew the whistle because all these concussion suits.
Dean.
Yeah, I have a more of a business question. Baseball today operates in a regional mode where you have market share and you have big market teams, small market teams, and the leagues have expanded extensively so that you now have middle divisions and stuff like that. Would it make sense for a sport like baseball to go to a table-based system, sort of like European soccer, where you have divisional play, you get promoted, and then you end up in the premier division, and then you're basically playing people of similar caliber, and you have excitement all the way down the food chain because somebody's got to fight tooth and nail not to get relegated or possibly to be promoted. I mean, is that a possible option?
I think the system works pretty well now. One of the things I didn't mention when I was talking about the Giants figures, we had operating revenue of $305 million. We paid out revenue sharing of $32 million.
Paid out.
Paid out.
Luxury tax, in effect.
Not luxury tax, revenue sharing. So there is a pretty good revenue sharing system in baseball.
So
you can-
Kansas City and Minnesota
Yeah,
can be
Kansas
on
City, Tampa Bay is very competitive. And I think the fact that it's a national sport, all the way from San Diego to Boston, Tampa Bay to Seattle, I think you'd lose something if you started stratifying.
Dean, let me talk about that from the soccer perspective, because we have a first division of soccer in the United States, a second division, a third division, a fourth division, and of course every other country in the world where you have that, they do have promotion and relegation. But we're also asking owners, let's say the guys who own the LA Galaxy, we're asking them to invest in a stadium, in David Beckham for an outrageous amount of money. They're losing a lot of money. And in our country, which is so vast and is so predicated on national sponsorship deals and national television contracts, if the LA Galaxy were relegated and the Carolina Railhawks in my league were promoted to First Division, that would wreak havoc on the national TV deal. It would wreak havoc on every sponsor that had bought into a league that had LA and New York and Chicago and the big market teams. And so I think that's the reason you're not going to see it in soccer in the next 10 or 15 years. It's probably the reason you can't have somebody buy the Dodgers for $2 billion and then find out they're relegated the following year, right? And they're playing AAA baseball in effect.
Teams which traditionally will have a nice season and then they'll just shed salary and they'll get rid of their whole top tier of their players, and then they're lousy the next year. There should be a price that they pay.
Well, that may be the case. Go ahead.
Dave, this is
Yeah.
a question for you. I'm sure most of us in this room have spent a great part of our adult lives driving our kids to soccer games, even if we never played the game ourselves. And one of the amazing things to me is how popular soccer is at the kid level, at the high school level, very popular. At Amherst, the men's and women's team, highly recruited, very successful, very popular. And then all of a sudden, like jumping off a cliff, when you get to the pro level, this country just loses interest. And that's particularly true, obviously, on the women's side, where the players are just as unbelievable and incredible. So a two-part question. One, do you have any idea why that is? And two, is there any hope that anyone can do anything to fix that?
Yeah, no, it's a question I had to answer quite a bit when I was the executive director of the World Cup bid and trying to explain U.S. soccer to the rest of the world. I think one of the things that's important to note is actually there are a lot of soccer fans in the United States. At last count, about 120 million people who are either casual or hardcore fans. That's Seattle sells out. That's roughly the number of unique individuals that watched the 2010 World Cup, according to Nielsen. And so it's not as if that fan base who's progressing up through the youth system is giving up on soccer. They may not be actually following the MLS or the NASL. They're following the Premiership. They're following the Mexican League. They're only watching international games. Somebody mentioned the globalization of sport. It's hard to imagine a sport that has become more truly global faster than soccer right now. And a lot of that has to do with the digital age.
Yeah, all you got to know is one team in the UK is going public in Singapore.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I'm serious. The Glazers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Man City, who just won the Premiership, has players in their starting 11 from probably 10 different countries, and I follow Arsenal, so and my son follows Arsenal, and if the left back on Arsenal stubs his toe in the shower after training on a Tuesday, my cell phone vibrates with the news, and I call my son and say, "Oh my goodness, did you see this?"
Is it true that
it's a game you can follow around the world? You just don't necessarily follow U.S. soccer on the pro level.
Is it true that the transfer fees are primarily funded by like 1 year's worth of jersey sales, and that's how the team in Spain can buy a player?
What it is true is
so much money for
a Manchester United ticket sales is probably the least portion of their revenue, and that they have more fans around the world than they have in England, because England's a country of 50 million and maybe only 10% of English fans like Man United because they like some other teams in England. There are probably more than 10 million Man United fans in the United States who are buying jerseys and are doing things like that.
Gene, do you foresee the NFL creating its own TV network?
Well, they have their own TV network.
Right, but I mean,
they've been growing it out.
Taking away from Fox, making it an exclusive NFL
Not for
franchise.
10 years.
Yeah,
they have a
just signed
10-year
a deal
deal
Right,
that's pegged to the collective bargaining agreement.
But
So-
I'm saying in the future, you talk about...
Well, in the
telling
future,
stories.
will there be networks 10 years from now? I mean, I got my friends are watching TV. They plug their Vizios into their computers.
Right.
Yeah.
So when is your friend going to start doing that? I mean, when is you going to buy direct, or are you going to just plug in the computer?
Yeah, the issue for the NFL and the issue for all pro sports leagues and for the Olympics and for FIFA and the World Cup is that this domestic territorial model of television
Distribution.
has generated billions and billions of dollars of revenue, and they're very loath to give it up until they know that cell phones and wristwatches and computers and other ways of getting live real-time media are going to generate those kinds of dollars. So one of the questions we were going to get to today, but we're not really getting to, is why suddenly this rash of 10-year contracts to a business that's arguably evolving so fast nobody's going to recognize television in 10 years. And part of that is to keep that model.
Network in business.
Yeah, and it's to keep the network. The network wants to stay in business because it wants the content, and the content provider wants the money stream. But you're right, there is no need for the middleman in a very short amount of time. In effect, we can all self-publish. We can self-publish now with music and writing, and people can have blogs. The NFL can self-publish if they want. Major League Baseball can self-publish.
Yeah, Dave Wolff. Dave, we lost our baseball team in Montreal, and one of the reasons was the city and the province weren't prepared to pay a big share of a new stadium. Yet I'm finding elsewhere, particularly Miami and other places, that teams are able to hold certain municipalities hostage to building a new stadium where they threaten to leave. And now,
Minneapolis.
how does that work as a business? You're looking at a sports team as a business, and yet a good portion of the cost can be laid on the municipality or the state.
I think it differs. In San Francisco, the Giants paid 100% of the cost of their stadium. So it differs.
Every market is different.
In Houston, which is where I live, the city and the county paid a major cost of the stadium because they felt it was something that was part of the city, just like building roads and bridges and other public works. And I think there's a strong argument for that.
Maryland also.
I think that, the Giants did a tremendous amount for the city, and because we had to pay for the cost ourselves, we have an $18 million a year debt service on our park, whereas we're competing with clubs that might have a $5 million occupancy cost in other cities. And I sort of resent the fact that San Francisco rode on the coattails of the Giants paying $420 million for the new ballpark. So it varies, it's negotiable, but I would make the argument, and I know there's a professor at Smith who disagrees with me, who sees himself as a sports economist, that a football stadium, particularly baseball stadiums, which get used 80 times a year, football stadiums is a little harder, being used 10 times a year, are civic improvements which are part of the fabric of a city and a metropolitan area, and the public should pay part of the cost.
And the economic impact of these sports events is great. We calculated the World Cup in the U.S., just 1 month and 64 games would be something on the order of $8 billion economic impact. A single Super Bowl is what, a 200 million economic impact typically in a
Unless
in a
it's ice
city.
everywhere. Like it was
Yeah, exactly.
This is going to be a controversial question, but can you comment on human trafficking in the Super Bowl? Human trafficking in the Super Bowl?
Human trafficking.
In the Super Bowl?
Repeat the question. Yeah, repeat the question.
You don't understand the question. Human trafficking. You're reporting here from the New York Times?
Yes.
Bring it back to evolving business models. So I'm very passionate about intersection of sports technology. We were talking about a little bit earlier. Myself and 2 other members of the class of 2007 actually founded the sports entertainment mobile software from last year because we see, not necessarily broadcast television, but other forms of customer engagement. There being areas ripe for innovation. So particularly in the fantasy sports arena, we see the most engaged type of customers. But the question is, for across all sports, will content owners, in this case more leagues, owners, and content distribution, with this new technological inflection point, mobile devices, mobile computing, it seems that both leagues and entities like CBS and NFL are much more ahead of the curve with deploying mobile devices. So are there cohesive strategies around that, or I know the NFL purchased something venture capital firms.
Well, when will the teams own your Facebook and your Twitter postings? When will the New York Times own their reporters' Twitter postings? I don't know why they're missing the boat on that. See, they should be owning that. They should be owning that content. See, right now, like I say, you work for New York Times, but you can have your own Twitter. New York Times doesn't own that. So that's now you got your own content. Now I don't know what your contract with the Times says. Maybe we can have somebody here who can tell us. But the point is, see, with all the games are owned by somebody. The team owns the jersey. They own all of that. So you don't have any original content except what you post. And they were saying you can't tweet it on a game, you can't take pictures on the bus, but the guys were trying to find ways where they could create content and put it out there. And then if you do that and you get enough followers, then you can make more money than your contract. So as soon as you sign your contract, you're instantly saying, okay, what else can I make while I'm doing this? Can I get speaking engagements?
And
whatever.
from the
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm in a business now doing that. I have a digital media company as well, and we're doing that now with athletes. Anybody who has a website will start thinking about having their own app. Big Papi just got his new app, just came out 2 weeks ago, 99 cents. Okay, Apple gets 33, he gets 66, and the sponsors are right in there. So that's where it's going.
I have a bottle of his wine. Why not his app?
Okay, there you go.
Anyway, guys, thank you. We've been asked to close down.